Warning! This episode includes discussion of immigration enforcement imagery and historical government actions. No graphic content is shown or promoted. The purpose of this discussion is factual clarity, historical context, and media accountability, not endorsement of harm.
Let me start this slow, because this is one of those moments where if you rush it, people miss the point. There are images making the rounds again. Old images, documented images, images that never stopped existing. They just stopped being convenient to remember. One of them shows Barack Obama standing at a podium publicly honoring Tom Homan for his leadership and effectiveness in immigration enforcement. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, openly, proudly, with applause. Medals don't get handed out by accident. Another image shows children being held in detention facilities, facilities that existed long before 2016, expanded before Trump ever announced a campaign, and were described at the time as necessary, temporary, and regrettable, but unavoidable. And a third image, older, grainier, and almost never shared, comes from the 1990s during the Bill Clinton years. Armed federal agents executing lawful immigration raids, families present, children present, guns visible, no hashtags, no hysteria, no history lesson demanded. Same government, same federal authority, same laws, same enforcement. But here's where everything breaks. When Obama did it, it was called responsible governance. When Clinton did it, it was called enforcement of the law. When Donald Trump does it, suddenly it's fascism. Suddenly it's Nazism. Suddenly half the country is accused of being the modern KKK. And that should stop you cold, because either enforcement has always been immoral or the outrage is selective. And selective outrage isn't morality. It's narrative control. See, this episode isn't about defending immigration policy. It's not about pretending the system is perfect. And it's definitely not about denying that some of these images are uncomfortable. They are. This episode is about asking a question that too many people are afraid to ask out loud. Why did the exact same actions become evil only when the wrong man enforced them? Why did the media clap when Obama handed out medals, but scream dictatorship when Trump enforced the same law? Why were detention centers a bureaucratic failure under one administration, but suddenly a moral apocalypse under another? And why is history being memory holed so aggressively that pointing this out now gets you labeled a Nazi sympathizer? That's not evolution, that's conditioning. Tonight, we're not arguing politics. We're exposing how quickly truth gets rewritten when power changes hands, and how easily people are taught to forget what they already lived through. Take a breath, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. All right, joining me tonight, Brian, bringing unapologetic heat. Rachel, cutting through the emotional framing with context. Daniel, pulling threads that make people uncomfortable. And Skylar, here to challenge the assumptions and keep this honest. Because if the truth collapses when all voices are in the room, it wasn't truth to begin with. All right, let's start with the image that completely wrecks the modern narrative. And I mean wrecks it beyond repair. This isn't opinion. This isn't interpretation. This is documentation. Barack Obama standing at a podium formally honoring Tom Homan for his leadership in immigration enforcement. Medals don't get handed out casually. They don't get awarded by accident. This was a public endorsement of deportations, removals, interior arrests, the exact same enforcement actions that today are labeled fascist, Nazi, racist, and KKK adjacent. Brian, why does this image cause panic now?
Because it proves the lie. The lie is that immigration enforcement suddenly became evil when Trump took office. Obama deported millions. Families were separated. Detention centers expanded. And the left didn't just tolerate it, they praised it. They called it firm but compassionate. Same actions, different president. That's it.
Exactly. Nothing about enforcement changed. The law didn't change. The agency didn't change. The mission didn't change. Only the political narrative did. Rachel put this in plain terms.
The policies Trump enforced were already in place. ICE didn't suddenly become rogue in 2026. What changed was how those policies were described. Under Obama, enforcement was framed as responsible governance. Under Trump, the same enforcement was framed as cruelty. That's not a policy shift. That's a storytelling shift.
And that storytelling wasn't accidental. Daniel, connect the dots.
This was about legitimacy. Obama enforced borders while reinforcing institutional trust. Trump enforced borders while challenging the media, the bureaucracy, and the political class. So enforcement had to be reframed, not as law enforcement, but as moral evil. That's how you delegitimize someone without changing the facts.
So let's ask the question nobody wants to answer honestly. If Tom Homan was worthy of a medal under Obama, if ICE was doing necessary work under Obama, if deportations were tough but fair under Obama, what exactly changed when Trump took office? Because the answer cannot be the law. It cannot be the policy. It cannot be the practice, Brian.
The only thing that changed was who was enforcing it. When Obama did it, the media gave cover. When Trump did it, the media gave a verdict. That's why people now believe ICE agents are Nazis, because they were taught to.
And that brings us to Schuyler, because this is where the left always pivots. Schuyler, the left says Trump is Hitler, ICE are Gestapo, and enforcement is racism. But Obama did the same thing and was praised. How do you square that?
Because Trump's intent matters. Obama enforced the law within norms. Trump used immigration as a weapon. Even if the actions were similar, the message was different, and that's why people reacted differently.
But intent doesn't override reality, and rhetoric doesn't turn law enforcement into Nazism. Because if enforcing immigration law is fascism, then Obama wasn't a saint. He was a fascist too. If ICE is the Gestapo under Trump, then they were the Gestapo under Obama. The same agents, the same leadership, the same mission. You don't get to crown someone moral for the action and condemn someone else as Hitler for the same action without admitting this was never about enforcement. It was about allegiance. And that's why this image matters, not because it defends Trump, but because it exposes the lie. All right, this is the segment where we slow everything down and strip the emotion out of the lie. Because kids in cages is one of the most effective propaganda phrases of the last 20 years. 3 words, 0 context, maximum outrage. And here's the fact that instantly makes people uncomfortable. The images most Americans associate with kids in cages come from the Barack Obama administration and later the Joe Biden administration, not Trump. Those chain link holding areas, Obama era. The overcrowded temporary processing centers, Obama era. The reappearance of those conditions after 2021, Biden era. Trump didn't create them. Brian, start us off.
This is where the whole narrative collapses. People saw those images for years and didn't care. No protests, no hashtags, no celebrities crying on camera. Then Trump gets elected, and suddenly those same photos are treated like breaking news. Even though they weren't new. The outrage wasn't about conditions, it was about Trump.
Exactly. Same images, same facilities, different president. Rachel put this in context.
The facilities were originally designed for short-term adult processing, not long-term family housing. When family units increased, the system wasn't equipped. That problem started under Obama, wasn't fixed structurally, and then resurfaced under Biden. The key point is this. The conditions people condemn were not unique to Trump, and in many cases, Trump inherited and modified them.
Modified is doing a lot of work there, because this is the part the media refuses to say out loud. Under Donald Trump, detention facilities were improved, not degraded. Beds replaced floor sleeping, toilets and showers were upgraded, facilities were cleaner, medical staff increased, mental health and child welfare personnel were added, oversight increased. Those are documented changes. And Daniel, why didn't that matter?
Because improvements don't serve outrage. You can't run a moral panic on better conditions. So instead of reporting what changed, the media froze the imagery in time and reassigned blame. Trump became the symbol, regardless of reality.
And that brings us to Schuyler, because this is where the left usually pivots. Schuyler, people hear what we're saying and respond with, I don't care who built the cages. Trump made them mean something. What do you say?
Because intent matters. Even if the facilities existed before, Trump turned immigration into a moral statement. His language made people feel like cruelty was the point. So when people saw those images under Trump, it didn't feel like bureaucracy. It felt like punishment. And you can't separate conditions from the message being sent.
And this is where feelings crash into facts, because you're saying Trump is morally responsible for conditions that were worse before him, improved under him, and deteriorated again after him, purely because of tone. That's not accountability, that's symbolic scapegoating.
Yeah, if better beds, more doctors, cleaner facilities, and more staff are fascism, then what exactly are we calling the Obama and Biden years?
This is why accuracy matters. You can criticize rhetoric, fine, but you don't get to rewrite material reality. The claim that Trump put kids in cages is demonstrably false. The facilities existed before him and were improved during his term.
And here's the real danger of the kids in cages lie. It trained people to respond to images without asking when, where, or under who. It taught people that blame is emotional, not factual. And it made it impossible to fix the system, because the moment you do, someone needs the outrage to survive. So let's say this clearly without hedging. If you're angry about kids in cages, your anger belongs with Obama and Biden. If you're honest about conditions, Trump made them better. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that discomfort isn't about the kids. That's about the narrative breaking. All right, now let's completely remove Trump from the equation, because this is where the argument really falls apart. These images aren't from 2016. They're not from 2020. They're from the 1990s, during the Bill Clinton years. Armed federal agents conducting immigration raids. Homes entered, families present, children present, guns visible. This wasn't ICE yet. This was INS, the predecessor to modern enforcement, and nobody lost their mind. No protests, no Hitler comparisons, no media declaring the end of democracy. Brian, why?
Because enforcement used to be understood as enforcement. Clinton signed laws expanding deportations. Democrats voted for them. Republicans voted for them. It wasn't framed as cruelty. It was framed as sovereignty. The idea that enforcement equals racism didn't exist yet because it hadn't been weaponized.
That's important. The weaponization came later. Rachel?
What people forget is that immigration enforcement was bipartisan for decades. Clinton-era raids were aggressive by today's standards, and they were reported matter-of-factly. No moral panic. The media didn't attach ideology to it. It was just government executing the law.
Daniel, when did that change?
When enforcement became useful as a political cudgel. Once identity politics took hold, immigration stopped being a policy question and became a moral sorting mechanism. Enforcement under Clinton didn't threaten the narrative order. Enforcement under Trump did, so history had to be rewritten.
And that rewriting required pretending none of this existed before.
Exactly. You can't sell Trump as unprecedented evil if people remember Clinton doing the same thing without hysteria. So memory becomes the enemy.
Skylar, this is where people on the left usually push back hard.
I don't think bringing up Clinton helps your case. That was a different era, different norms, different understanding. Trump governed in a time when we knew better, and he still chose to escalate. Historical comparisons feel like an excuse to avoid accountability. Just because something happened before doesn't mean we should accept it now, especially when it's paired with hateful rhetoric.
And that's the trap, because once you admit enforcement existed across administrations, Democrat and Republican, you lose the villain narrative. You lose the moral high ground, and you're left with something far less emotionally satisfying: reality. Reality says this wasn't invented by Trump. Reality says it wasn't hidden under Obama. Reality says Clinton enforced borders without being called a Nazi. So when people say this has never happened before, what they really mean is I was never told to care before. And that's not history, that's programming.
All right, let's take a quick breath here, because if you're still listening at this point, you're exactly why this show exists. Data and Dissonance isn't backed by a network. We don't have corporate sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. What keeps this show alive is you, sharing it, talking about it, and supporting it directly. If you want to support the show, head over to the merch store. We've got the coffee blends, light, medium, dark, roasted in the US, sourced responsibly, and honestly, it's damn good coffee. We've got the hats, hoodies, mugs, stickers, all branded, all clean, all built around the idea that independent thinking still matters. When you grab something from the store, you're not just buying merch. You're helping keep conversations like this outside the algorithm and away from people who would rather memory be optional. So if you believe in calling out selective outrage, in refusing to let history be rewritten in real time, and in supporting independent voices, the merch link is in the description. All right, let's bring this home.
Let me leave you with this, and I want you to really sit with it. Nothing we talked about tonight is secret. None of it is hidden. None of it requires conspiracy theories or leaps of faith. It's all public record, images, videos, policies, timelines, administrations. And yet, millions of people are absolutely convinced that immigration enforcement only became immoral in 2016. And that belief didn't come from facts, it came from repetition. Because if enforcement itself were the crime, then it would have been a crime under Bill Clinton, it would have been a crime under Barack Obama, and it would still be a crime regardless of who sat in the Oval Office. But that's not how it was framed. Instead, we were taught something far more dangerous. That intent can be assigned retroactively. That morality can be switched on and off depending on the name at the bottom of an executive order. That history can be erased not by force, but by selective outrage. And once people accept that, once they accept that truth is flexible, everything else becomes possible. You can convince someone that enforcing a law is compassion one year and fascism the next. You can convince someone that a federal agent is a public servant under one administration and a Nazi under another. You can convince someone that remembering history is immoral if it disrupts the narrative. And that's not progress, that's conditioning. And here's the part nobody wants to admit out loud. This didn't radicalize people, it infantilized them. It trained them to outsource thinking, to wait for headlines before forming opinions, to feel morally superior without doing the work of understanding. And that's why conversations like this matter, not because they're comfortable, but because they force consistency. You can argue immigration policy should change. You can argue enforcement should look different. You can argue the system is broken. All of that is fair. What you cannot do, at least honestly, is pretend the system was invented by one man you don't like. Because once you accept that lie, you're no longer arguing policy. You're participating in a ritual, one where history is rewritten, memory is punished, and disagreement becomes heresy. And that never ends well. So remember this the next time you see one of those images, clipped, cropped, and emotionally packaged for you. Ask yourself why you weren't told to be angry the first time you saw it, because the truth didn't change. Only the permission did. Remember to speak truth. Stir thought.
Tonight's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. Because if you're drawn to stories about power, deception, and the cost of truth, you're already living in the world these books explore. If you've read The Covenant Protocol, you know it doesn't deal in simple heroes or easy villains. It deals in systems, motives, and what happens when the official story doesn't line up with reality. The Prophet Directive takes that even further, pulling back the curtain on intelligence games, moral compromise, and how narratives are engineered to control outcomes. And now, Black Echo Rising, where the consequences finally catch up to the lies. These aren't escapist thrillers. They're reflections, wrapped in suspense, grounded in realism, and written for people who understand that truth is rarely handed to you cleanly. You can find all the books now. Links are in the description. And with that, thanks for spending part of your Monday with us. Share the episode, support independent voices, and remember to speak truth. Stir thought.